The sun had barely begun its descent, casting a golden hue over the sprawling landscape of our Los Angeles estate. From the master bedroom's balcony, I looked out over the meticulously manicured gardens, the sparkling pool, and the distant cityscape that seemed to stretch endlessly. This was the life we had built, Jessica and I, to the outside world. We were the embodiment of success and happiness. But in the quiet moments when the city lights dimmed and the world fell into a whisper, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. I leaned against the balcony railing, feeling the slight chill of the evening air as it mingled with the remnants of warmth from the day. The soft murmur of the fountain below provided a soothing backdrop, yet it did little to calm the unease gnawing at me. Our home was a testament to our achievements, a grand villa with expansive rooms, a gourmet kitchen, and a collection of art pieces that spoke of refined taste. The grandeur of our surroundings only served to accentuate the growing distance between Jessica and me. Jessica, a brilliant lawyer known for her sharp mind and unwavering dedication, had a career that dazzled her. Her name was synonymous with success in the legal world, and she carried the weight of her achievements with grace. Her presence in the office was commanding, her reputation impeccable. Yet, within the walls of our home, there was an unsettling dissonance. The same charm and poise that made her a force to be reckoned with professionally seemed to falter in our personal life. We had met years ago, at a charity gala, and our connection had been instantaneous. We were two ambitious souls who found in each other a mirror of our aspirations. Our romance had been swift and passionate, culminating in a wedding that was the envy of our social circle. We had built a life that many would consider the pinnacle of success, a life replete with luxury, influence, and social standing. But as time wore on, the sheen of our perfect life began to dull. It wasn't a single event or a glaring issue that I could pinpoint. It was the small, subtle shifts. The way Jessica's laughter no longer echoed through the halls as it once did, the way her eyes seemed to wander past me at dinner, and the increasing frequency with which she was called away on urgent business. There was a restlessness in her demeanor that I couldn't ignore. Evenings were the hardest. The silence that fell over our home after the last of the guests had departed and the lights had dimmed felt like a shroud. Jessica's preoccupation with her career often left me alone with my thoughts. And those thoughts began to drift toward doubts and fears. I had always been proud of the life we had created, but it had become increasingly clear that our success had not translated into happiness. Jessica's dedication to her work was admirable, but it seemed to come at the expense of our time together. The once cherished moments of intimacy and connection had become rare and fleeting. Our conversations had dwindled to polite exchanges, and the warmth that once characterized our relationship seemed to have been replaced by a cold formality. I tried to dismiss these feelings as mere byproducts of our busy lives, convincing myself that our love was strong enough to weather any storm. Yet, the nagging sense that something was wrong persisted, refusing to be silenced. It was as if the very fabric of our relationship had begun to unravel, thread by thread, leaving behind a void that neither of us seemed able to fill. As the city lights twinkled in the distance, I found myself grappling with the realization that the life we had so carefully constructed was not as perfect as it appeared. The facade of our glamorous existence was beginning to crack, revealing an undercurrent of dissatisfaction and disconnection. The opulence of our surroundings did little to mask the growing chasm between us. In those moments of solitude, I wondered if the dream we had pursued with such fervor had led us astray. Was it possible that the very success that had once bound us together was now driving us apart? As I stood there, overlooking the sprawling estate that symbolized our achievements, I couldn't escape the feeling that something significant was missing. The question lingered in my mind, a constant companion: what had gone wrong, and how could we find our way back to the happiness that once seemed so effortlessly within our grasp? The city of Los Angeles shimmered with an allure that seemed to promise endless possibilities. For Jessica, it was a city of opportunities and indulgence, but also of relentless pressure to maintain an image of perfection. As the days blended into weeks, The weight of this pressure began to chip away at the once unshakable facade of our life together. It was within this charged atmosphere that Jessica's choices would set the stage for a devastating shift. Jessica had always been a woman of extraordinary ambition. Her meteoric rise in the legal world was a testament to her intelligence and perseverance. Yet, beneath the polished exterior and the accolades lay a growing anxiety, a fear that the life she had cultivated with such effort might be slipping through her fingers. The demands of her career, combined with the expectation to uphold a lavish lifestyle, created a chasm between her aspirations and reality. It was this growing divide that led her down a path she had once vowed never to tread. David Lawson, an influential businessman with a reputation for both charm and ruthlessness, entered Jessica's world like a gust of wind on a sweltering day. They met at a high-profile charity event, one of those glittering soirees where the city's elite rubbed shoulders and exchanged pleasantries under the guise of philanthropy. David was charismatic, with an air of self-assuredness that commanded attention. His success and status were immediately apparent, and he moved through the crowd with the ease of someone who had always belonged in the highest echelons of society. Jessica found herself drawn to him, not merely because of his magnetic personality, but also because of what he represented: a world of influence and affluence that promised to alleviate the pressures that had begun to plague her. Conversations with David were intoxicating. They were filled with a blend of flattery and ambition that made her feel valued and understood in ways she hadn't experienced in a long time. His compliments, delivered with a casual confidence, were a balm to the insecurities she harbored. In the weeks following their initial meeting, their interactions grew more frequent. What started as casual conversations and occasional business dinners soon evolved into private meetings and intimate exchanges. David was adept at creating moments of vulnerability. Using his charisma to lower Jessica's defenses, he listened attentively to her concerns, offering solutions that seemed both practical and alluring. The more they talked, the more Jessica found herself ensnared in his web of influence and desire. Jessica's motives for pursuing this relationship were layered. On the surface, it was about maintaining her high standard of living and ensuring that her place in society remained secure. The economic pressures of keeping up appearances were mounting, and David's offers of support and advice seemed like a lifeline. Beneath this, however, lay a more complex emotional need: an escape from the growing dissatisfaction with her marriage and a yearning for validation that had begun to overshadow her judgment. Their meetings became increasingly clandestine. What was once an innocent flirtation had evolved into a full-fledged affair. David's power and allure made him an intoxicating presence in Jessica's life. He showered her with attention and admiration, making her feel cherished and significant in ways that seemed increasingly elusive within her marriage. His promises of security and advancement were tempting, creating a seductive narrative that Jessica struggled to resist. The affair was not just about physical attraction, it was a psychological escape. David represented a different world, one where Jessica could reinvent herself and find solace from the mounting pressures of her professional and personal life. Their relationship was a paradox, a way to hold on to her lifestyle while simultaneously exploring a new path that seemed fraught with potential. Jessica's feelings of guilt and anxiety were mitigated by the perceived benefits of her affair. She justified her actions as necessary sacrifices for the greater good of her well-being and the preservation of her lifestyle. In her mind, David's presence was a means to an end, a way to navigate through the treacherous waters of her life without sinking into obscurity. As the affair deepened, Jessica became increasingly adept at concealing her duplicity. She maintained her public persona with an air of effortless grace, all while managing a hidden world of secret meetings and clandestine communications. The contrast between her public life and private deceit grew starker, but to her, it was a necessary compromise, a way to keep the veneer of perfection intact while exploring the forbidden pleasures offered by David. In the end, Jessica's choice to engage in this affair was driven by a complex interplay of ambition, fear, and emotional need. It was a decision that seemed to offer immediate gratification and security. Yet it came with the perilous risk of unraveling everything she had built. As she continued to navigate this dangerous liaison, the foundations of her marriage to Jake began to tremble, setting the stage for a reckoning that neither of them could foresee. It was a chilly evening in late autumn when everything changed. The house was unusually quiet. Jessica was attending a networking event that, she claimed, was crucial for her career. I had come home early from the office, and after a long day, I was in no mood for the usual pretense of our social life. Instead, I found myself drawn to the study, seeking solace in the familiar sanctuary of my books and the soft glow of the desk lamp. As I sorted through a stack of papers on my desk, I noticed an envelope tucked under a pile of legal documents. It wasn't unusual to find stray bits of correspondence among the clutter, but this envelope was different. It was pristine, its edges sharp and clean, and it had no return address. Curious. I opened it and discovered a small cache of printed emails and text messages. My heart skipped a beat as I saw Jessica's name at the top of the message thread. I recognized David Lawson's name too, an unmistakable sign of the influential businessman she had been spending time with. My hands trembled slightly as I began to read. The messages between Jessica and David were nothing short of incriminating. They spoke of secret meetings, whispered promises, and a level of intimacy that went far beyond professional or platonic. The exchanges were filled with flirtatious banter and explicit plans, revealing a depth of connection that was both shocking and painful. Each line seemed to confirm the worst of my fears, painting a picture of a relationship that was far more than Jessica had ever admitted to me. It was as though the world had been pulled out from beneath me. The life I had thought was perfect was crumbling, and the realization hit me with an almost physical force. The texts were dated over the past few months during which I had noticed Jessica's growing distance and preoccupation. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, each revelation more damning than the last. The feelings that surged through me were a tumultuous blend of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. My mind raced through a myriad of emotions, trying to reconcile the Jessica I thought I knew with the person revealed in those messages. It was as if I was seeing a different side of her, a side that had been hidden behind a mask of professionalism and charm. I paced the room, grappling with the reality of the situation. The betrayal was raw and personal, but there was also a part of me that felt a desperate need for retribution. The more I read, the more I felt compelled to take action. The thought of confronting Jessica immediately seemed both overwhelming and inevitable, but I knew I needed to tread carefully. The emotional storm brewing inside me needed an outlet, and revenge seemed like a justifiable path to restore some semblance of control. The next few hours were a blur of restless pacing and futile attempts to focus on anything other than the crushing weight of my discovery. I went through the messages again, meticulously noting dates, times, and content. There was something methodical about it, as if documenting the evidence would somehow make the situation more bearable. As the evening wore on and Jessica still hadn't returned, I found myself on the verge of making a decision. The betrayal was not just an emotional wound but also a breach of trust that threatened to unravel everything we had built together. The question wasn't just about how to confront her, but about what to do next. I had to consider the repercussions of my actions and the impact they would have on our lives. I needed to know more about David, about the extent of his influence, and how best to leverage this knowledge. If revenge was to be my course, it had to be calculated and precise. My initial shock was giving way to a steely resolve. I was determined to use the information I had to strike back, to make David pay for his role in this betrayal, and to confront Jessica with the full force of my discovery. When Jessica finally walked through the door, her face lit up with the forced cheerfulness she often wore when she was trying to hide something. But tonight, I was ready. The weight of the evidence was a burden I carried, and it was time to lift the veil and confront the truth. The life we had constructed, the facade of our perfect existence, was about to come crashing down. I met her gaze with a mixture of cold resolve and hurt, and in that moment, I knew that our lives were irrevocably changed. The secrets that had been carefully concealed were now out in the open, and there was no turning back. The path ahead was fraught with pain and conflict, but it was one I was prepared to navigate. The stage was set for a confrontation that would alter the course of our lives forever. The revelation of Jessica's betrayal was not merely a personal wound. It was a catalyst for a meticulously planned retaliation. As I grappled with the enormity of the situation, my mind began to focus on one singular goal: to expose David Lawson and ensure he paid dearly for his role in dismantling my life. Revenge, though born out of pain, had become a calculated objective, and I set about devising a strategy that would strike at the heart of David's empire. The first step in my plan was to gather comprehensive evidence of David's illicit activities. His position of influence and his reputation for ruthless business dealings made him a prime target. The emails and texts from Jessica provided a crucial starting point. But I knew I needed more than just a personal betrayal. I had to uncover tangible, undeniable proof of his criminal behavior. I began by researching David's business ventures and financial history. His company had a sprawling network of investments and transactions, and I aimed to find any irregularities that might indicate fraud or corruption. Late nights were spent poring over financial records, corporate filings, and news articles. I enlisted the help of a private investigator, a contact from my network, who had experience in uncovering corporate malfeasance. Together, we combed through mountains of paperwork, searching for discrepancies or signs of illegal activity. The investigation revealed several troubling anomalies. Large sums of money had been funneled through offshore accounts, and numerous instances of financial transactions appeared to be designed to obscure their true nature. The evidence pointed to a sophisticated scheme of embezzlement and financial manipulation. It was clear that David's success was built on a foundation of deceit. Once we had compiled a substantial dossier of evidence, I began to set the trap. The goal was to lure David into a situation where he would unwittingly incriminate himself. I needed a scenario where he would be compelled to act in a way that would expose his fraudulent activities. I crafted a plan involving a fake investment opportunity, a lucrative venture that was purportedly in need of his financial acumen and resources. The proposal was designed to be irresistible, promising high returns with minimal risk. To make it convincing, I enlisted the help of a few trusted contacts to pose as interested investors and legitimate business partners. The operation had to be flawless, and every detail had to appear genuine. With the bait set, I arranged a series of meetings with David. Each meeting was meticulously planned to ensure that David would feel confident and secure, leading him to believe that this was a genuine opportunity. I played the role of an eager participant, making sure to keep the discussions professional and focused, while subtly steering the conversation towards the areas where we had uncovered evidence of his wrongdoing. David, ever the opportunist, was drawn to the prospect of the investment. His arrogance and confidence made him an easy mark. He saw the meetings as a chance to expand his empire and bolster his reputation. His assurance in his invincibility blinded him to the danger that was closing in on him. The trap was set, and David took the bait. During one of the meetings, he was presented with what seemed to be a legitimate contract and financial projections. As he reviewed the documents, I noticed a glint of satisfaction in his eyes, a sure sign that he believed he was about to seal a deal that would further solidify his dominance. At the critical moment, I ensured that all necessary documentation was in place to capture his acceptance of the terms and conditions. The agreement included clauses that, when scrutinized, would reveal the fraudulent nature of his operations. I made sure to have legal experts on standby, ready to step in with the appropriate action once David had committed to the deal. As David signed the documents, I could almost feel the weight of the trap closing in. His confidence was palpable, and he had no idea that his actions were about to be used against him. The final piece of the puzzle was a carefully orchestrated revelation, a press conference where the fraudulent activities would be exposed to the public and the authorities. The culmination of this plan would be to present the evidence in a way that would not only dismantle David's reputation but also ensure that he faced legal repercussions. I had prepared every detail to ensure that the trap was inescapable and that David would have no means of evading the consequences of his actions. The night before the press conference, I sat alone in the study, reviewing the final arrangements. The sense of anticipation was tinged with a bitter satisfaction. The plan was set into motion, and the next day would bring the confrontation that would reshape all our lives. David Lawson's empire was about to face its reckoning, and with it, the culmination of my quest for justice and retribution. The day of reckoning arrived with the harsh clarity of a spotlight piercing through the murky shadows of deception. The press conference was meticulously orchestrated, a spectacle designed to lay bare David Lawson's web of deceit for all to see. The event was held in a grand hall, filled with journalists, cameras, and an atmosphere crackling with anticipation. What was intended as a high-profile investment opportunity was now the stage for David's downfall. As I took my seat among the attendees, a surge of grim satisfaction coursed through me. The presentation began with a detailed exposition of David's fraudulent activities, each slide revealing a layer of deception more intricate than the last. The evidence was overwhelming: offshore accounts, false financial statements, and manipulative transactions. The scandal was laid out with meticulous precision, ensuring that there could be no doubt about the extent of David's wrongdoing. The media frenzy that followed was swift and unforgiving. News outlets scrambled to cover the story, each headline more damning than the last. David's reputation, once a symbol of power and influence, crumbled before the eyes of the public. His business empire, built on a foundation of deceit, began to unravel as investors pulled their support and partners distanced themselves. The once prominent businessman was now a figure of scorn and derision, his every move scrutinized and criticized. The repercussions for David were immediate and severe. His assets were frozen, and legal authorities launched investigations into his affairs. The financial institutions that had once held him in high regard now viewed him with suspicion, and the courts were poised to deliver justice. David's fall from grace was complete, and the weight of his actions was finally being felt. Amidst the chaos, Jessica's world began to collapse in parallel. The news of David's downfall and the subsequent scandal had a profound impact on her career. The connection between her and David, though initially concealed, was now exposed as a crucial element in the unfolding drama. The fallout from the scandal threatened to engulf her professional life, casting a shadow over her accomplishments and reputation. Jessica's reaction was one of sheer panic. She had always been adept at managing crises, but this was a different beast altogether. Her usually composed demeanor gave way to a whirlwind of frantic phone calls and desperate consultations. She sought to understand the full extent of the damage, piecing together how her involvement had become a public spectacle. In the face of mounting pressure, Jessica reached out to influential friends and colleagues, trying to salvage what remained of her career. She met with high-profile advisors and legal experts, hoping to find a strategy that could mitigate the damage. Her charm and persuasive skills, once assets in her professional toolkit, were now employed in a desperate bid to protect her reputation and livelihood. The support she received was a mixed bag. Some offered assistance, understanding the complexities of her situation and the nuances of her involvement. Others were less sympathetic, distancing themselves in the wake of the scandal. Jessica's pleas for help were met with varying degrees of empathy, but the reality was that the damage had already been done. She tried to distance herself from the scandal by emphasizing her commitment to ethical practices and her dedication to her clients. She launched a public relations campaign aimed at restoring her image, addressing the media with statements that sought to clarify her role and express her regret. Despite her efforts, the shadow of the scandal loomed large, and regaining the trust of her clients and colleagues proved to be an uphill battle. Amid the turmoil, Jessica's attempts to navigate the fallout were marked by a growing sense of isolation. The support network she had once relied upon was now fractured, and her position in the legal community was precarious. The personal and professional consequences of the scandal were profound, and she struggled to find a way to move forward amidst the wreckage. As she faced the mounting challenges, Jessica was forced to confront the reality of her situation. The revelations about David and the subsequent exposure of her role had set off a chain reaction that threatened to derail everything she had worked for. The pursuit of redemption and the quest to rebuild her career became her primary focus, even as the echoes of betrayal and scandal continued to reverberate through her life. The evening air was heavy with the scent of freshly fallen rain as Jessica arrived at the villa. The atmosphere inside was tense and strained, a reflection of the chasm that had opened between us. After the scandal had exploded, she had become a ghost in our home, appearing only briefly before retreating into the whirlwind of her efforts to salvage her career. Tonight, she had asked for a meeting, desperate to address the wreckage of our relationship and find a way back from the precipice we had reached. As I opened the door to her knock, I was met with a sight that tugged at the remnants of my emotional reserves. Jessica stood there, her usual polished exterior softened by an expression of genuine distress. Her eyes, once so confident and assured, now held a vulnerability that I hadn't seen in a long time. She stepped inside, and I closed the door behind her, the finality of the gesture settling over us. We sat in the living room, a space that now felt foreign and fraught with unspoken tension. The room was lit softly by the dim glow of the lamps, casting shadows that seemed to mirror the uncertainty of our conversation. Jessica took a deep breath before she began to speak, her voice trembling slightly as she tried to find the right words. "Jake," she started, her tone laden with regret, "I know I have no right to ask anything of you after everything that's happened. But I need you to listen." I nodded, feeling a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Jessica's betrayal had been a profound shock. And the hurt was still raw, but a part of me was willing to hear her out. "I made terrible mistakes," she continued, her gaze fixed on the floor as if searching for the right way to express her remorse. "I allowed myself to get caught up in something completely wrong. I thought I could control it, that it wouldn't affect us. I was wrong." Her admission was a painful echo of the trust that had been shattered. I had struggled to make sense of her actions and the choices that had led to this point. Her affair with David Lawson had been more than just a breach of our marriage. It had been a betrayal of the values and commitments we had shared. "I want to explain," Jessica said, her eyes finally meeting mine. The pressure to maintain our lifestyle, to keep up appearances, it was overwhelming. I felt trapped and lost, and I made the worst possible decision. I got involved with David because I thought it was the only way to handle everything, but I see now how wrong I was. Her words were an attempt to rationalize her actions, to provide context for the decisions that had devastated our marriage. I listened, my emotions a swirling mix of anger, sadness, and a reluctant desire to understand. Her explanations, though heartfelt, did little to erase the pain of the betrayal. Yet, there was a part of me that wanted to find closure, to understand why the woman I had loved and trusted had made such choices. "I know that saying sorry doesn't undo the damage," Jessica continued, her voice breaking. "I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to make things right, to prove that I'm still committed to us, to our relationship. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild what we've lost." Her plea was desperate, and I could see the toll that the past weeks had taken on her. The professional and personal repercussions had left her weary and vulnerable. Despite my anger, I could not ignore the anguish in her voice, the genuine remorse that seemed to emanate from her. "You've made it very clear that you want to repair our relationship," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "But repairing something that's been broken so deeply is not easy. Trust has been shattered, and it takes time and effort to rebuild." Jessica nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I understand that, Jake. I'm willing to work on it. I'll do whatever it takes, counseling, open communication, anything that will help us find a way back to each other. I don't expect it to be easy, but I am committed to trying." Her words were a promise. One that would require more than just verbal assurances. The road to rebuilding trust would be long and fraught with challenges. Yet, her willingness to confront her mistakes and take responsibility was a crucial first step. "I need time to process everything," I said, my voice tinged with a mixture of resolve and vulnerability. "We both do. And if we're going to try to move forward, we need to be honest and open with each other. It's not just about mending what's broken, it's about understanding why it broke and how we can prevent it from happening again." Jessica's face reflected a mix of relief and apprehension. "I understand, Jake. I'll respect whatever timeline you need. Just know that I'm here, and I'm committed to making things right." As she left that night, a small glimmer of hope remained. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with emotional hurdles, but Jessica's willingness to confront her actions and seek reconciliation was a tentative first step. The future of our relationship was now in the balance, and it would require both of us to navigate the complexities of rebuilding trust and understanding. As the days passed, the initial turbulence of Jessica's return began to settle into a rhythm of tentative hope and cautious optimism. The decision to give each other a second chance was not made lightly. It was a resolution forged from a deep desire to mend what had been broken and a commitment to rediscovering the bond that once defined our relationship. We began by establishing ground rules for our interactions, recognizing that rebuilding trust would require both of us to make a concerted effort. We sought the help of a marriage counselor, someone who could provide a neutral perspective and guide us through the complexities of our emotions. The sessions were an eye-opening experience, revealing the depths of our communication issues and the underlying fears that had contributed to the rift between us. Each counseling session was a journey through the landscape of our fractured relationship. We talked openly about the pain and betrayal, each of us grappling with the scars left by the scandal and the subsequent fallout. The process was painful but necessary, as it forced us to confront the reality of what had happened and to articulate our hopes and fears for the future. In our attempts to reconnect, we started with small, deliberate steps. We made an effort to spend quality time together, engaging in activities we once enjoyed as a couple. We revisited old favorite spots in Los Angeles, places that held fond memories and symbolized the early days of our relationship. It was an attempt to rekindle the affection and companionship that had once been the foundation of our marriage. Despite our efforts, a palpable tension lingered between us. The process of rebuilding was not as straightforward as either of us had hoped. The emotional cracks that had formed were not easily mended, and the weight of past betrayals continued to cast a shadow over our interactions. The trust that had been shattered was proving difficult to restore, and each attempt at closeness seemed to highlight the distance that now existed. There were moments of genuine connection, where laughter and shared experiences provided a glimpse of what we had once had. Yet, these moments were often followed by periods of silence and reflection, as we both grappled with the reality of our situation. The effort to forge a new path together was marred by the ever-present awareness of the fractures that had emerged in our relationship. Jessica's attempts to demonstrate her commitment were sincere. She made efforts to be transparent and open, understanding that rebuilding trust required consistent action over time. She apologized repeatedly and expressed her willingness to work through our issues. Her dedication to repairing our relationship was evident, but the scars of her betrayal remained, a constant reminder of the breach that had occurred. For my part, I worked to confront my own emotions and to engage in the process of healing. I recognized that holding on to anger and resentment would only hinder our progress. I tried to approach our interactions with an open mind, allowing space for the possibility of reconciliation while acknowledging the challenges we faced. The counselor's guidance was invaluable in navigating the complexities of our situation. We learned to communicate more effectively, to listen with empathy, and to address the underlying issues that had contributed to our estrangement. The sessions provided a framework for understanding our emotional needs and for developing strategies to rebuild our connection. As we continued to work on our relationship, we faced the reality that the path forward would not be easy. The cracks that had formed were not easily repaired, and the process of healing would require time and patience. We both knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but the decision to give each other a second chance was rooted in a shared hope for the future. The decision to rebuild our relationship was a testament to our commitment to each other, despite the pain and difficulties we faced. We acknowledged that while we could strive for a new beginning, the echoes of the past would always be a part of our journey. Our relationship was now a work in progress, one that required ongoing effort and understanding. In the quiet moments of reflection, we both recognized the importance of honesty and openness. We understood that the road to reconciliation would be filled with both triumphs and setbacks. The decision to give each other a second chance was not a guarantee of a perfect resolution but a commitment to facing the future together, despite the challenges that lay ahead. As we moved forward, the future of our relationship remained uncertain. The cracks in our foundation were a reminder of the work that lay ahead. But through the effort and dedication we both brought to the process, there was a glimmer of hope that, despite everything, we might find a way to heal and grow together once more. As we ventured into this new chapter of our lives, the reality of our situation settled over us with a mix of acceptance and cautious optimism. The journey to rebuild our relationship had been arduous and fraught with emotional complexity, but we had reached a point where we were ready to embrace the possibilities of a fresh start. The road ahead was uncharted and uncertain, but it was a path we were committed to navigating together. The process of establishing our new beginning involved more than just addressing the wounds of the past. It required a fundamental shift in how we viewed and interacted with each other. Our relationship had undergone a profound transformation, and the foundation upon which we built our lives together had been irrevocably altered. The betrayal and subsequent efforts to mend what had been broken had changed us both. And we needed to acknowledge and accept these changes as we moved forward. We began by reassessing our priorities and redefining what mattered most to us. The grandeur of our previous lifestyle seemed less important now. The emphasis shifted from maintaining appearances and social status to finding genuine contentment and connection in our everyday lives. We decided to simplify our lives, focusing on the aspects that brought us joy and fulfillment. This meant making intentional choices about how we spent our time and energy. One of the first steps in this new phase was to create new routines and rituals that reflected our evolving relationship. We sought out activities that allowed us to bond and reconnect on a deeper level. Weekend getaways to serene locations, cooking meals together, and engaging in meaningful conversations became integral parts of our routine. These moments were not just about escaping our past but about forging new memories and building a sense of intimacy that had been obscured by the turmoil we had endured. We also made an effort to cultivate a sense of gratitude for the positive aspects of our lives. The process of rebuilding had highlighted the strengths in our relationship, the resilience that had carried us through the darkest times. We learned to appreciate the small victories and moments of connection that reaffirmed our commitment to each other. It was through these moments of shared joy and understanding that we began to rebuild a sense of partnership and trust. Navigating our changed relationship required patience and flexibility. We had to learn to accept each other's flaws and vulnerabilities, understanding that the person we were now was different from who we had been before. This acceptance was not always easy, as it involved confronting uncomfortable truths and adjusting our expectations. But it was a necessary step in finding a new equilibrium in our relationship. Therapy sessions continued to play a crucial role in our journey. The insights and strategies we gained helped us address ongoing challenges and communicate more effectively. We learned to express our needs and concerns with greater clarity and to listen with empathy. The counseling sessions provided a space for us to explore our evolving dynamic and to find ways to support each other as we adapted to our new circumstances. One of the most profound realizations was the understanding that our relationship would never be the same as it had been before. The changes we had undergone and the experiences we had shared had left an indelible mark. We could not return to a previous version of ourselves. Nor could we erase the past. Instead, we had to embrace the new reality and find ways to create a fulfilling future together. As time passed, we found a new rhythm in our life together. The scars of our past remained, but they were no longer the defining feature of our relationship. We learned to navigate our changed circumstances with resilience and hope, finding solace in the progress we had made and the strength we had discovered in each other. In the end, our new beginning was not about erasing the past but about acknowledging it and moving forward with renewed purpose. We had faced the trials of betrayal and forgiveness, and through it all, we had found a way to rebuild our connection. Our relationship was a testament to the power of second chances and the possibility of growth and healing. The future remained uncertain, but we approached it with a sense of possibility. Our journey taught us that happiness could be found even amid adversity. We had learned to accept each other as we were and to seek joy in the present moment. As we continued to build our life together, we did so with the understanding that our relationship had been irrevocably changed but that it still held the potential for new beginnings and renewed happiness.